Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you the next video in the story of Hoai Ca, a story that isn't loud or filled with non-stop drama, but instead unfolds slowly, revealing layers of emotion that feel deeply connected to everyday life and easy to resonate with. What's happening in this story mirrors the way people face unexpected upheavals, navigate emotions, and confront those subtle inner stirrings that they sometimes haven't even found words for yet. In the previous episode, after the near loss of his child, Alex was still unable to escape the shock and lingering fear. For him, that moment wasn't just a thin line between losing and keeping, but a turning point that forced him to reflect on everything he had. In Alex's heart, his gratitude toward Hoai Ca was no longer fleeting. It became a deep, quiet appreciation that took root day by day. It was the gratitude of a father who had stood on the edge of losing the most precious thing in his life, and who realized that, in his weakest moment, Hoai Ca was there, calm, resilient, and full of love. The moment his daughter, in panic and exhaustion, unconsciously called Hoai Ca Mom, pierced the deepest part of Alex's heart like a fine needle. He froze when he heard it, feeling pain, sorrow, and an overwhelming wave of emotion all at once. Alex told no one and didn't allow himself to analyze what that feeling truly was. He only knew that from that instant on, something very different had begun to grow inside him. An unspoken decision, never declared, never announced, yet silently strengthening over time. And from that moment, the relationship between Hoai Ca and Alex no longer seemed to stand still at its old boundary, but slowly and cautiously began to shift toward an uncertain crossroads, even though neither of them was fully aware of it yet. In the days that followed, Alex began appearing around Hoai Ca more often, in a very natural way. He never came with grand reasons or special words. They were simple, everyday visits. Sometimes a few pieces of fruit he picked up along the way, other times just stopping by to ask if her leg had fully healed and whether walking was still painful or inconvenient. Alex's concern was always measured, just enough for the other person to feel his sincerity, yet never enough to feel intrusive or burdensome. In every encounter, Alex remained careful and restrained. He never rushed, never crossed boundaries, never said anything that might make Hoai Ca uncomfortable. He was simply there, like a true friend, present when needed, listening when she chose to share, and stepping back at the right moment. And it was precisely that calmness and patience that quietly began to change the atmosphere between them, even though neither of them acknowledged it aloud. Alex also gently invited Hoai Ca to take the children out together on several occasions. His invitations were always soft and unforced. Sometimes it was an afternoon at a familiar park, letting the children run freely beneath the green trees. Other times, it was a small, cozy restaurant where they could sit together without rushing. Occasionally, it was nothing more than a slow walk in the fading sunlight of the day, no destination, no fixed plan. Hoai Ca didn't overthink those invitations. In her mind, everything revolved around the children. She saw them as opportunities for the kids to find joy again, to have peaceful moments after everything they had been through. Watching Tony and Alex's daughter play together so freely, laughing, innocent, without any sense of distance or caution, gave Hoai Ca a sense of reassurance, and she agreed. For her, as long as the children were happy and healthy, everything else could be set aside. As for the vague emotions quietly emerging within her, Hoai Ca chose to gently ignore them, as if she wasn't ready to face them yet, or didn't know what to call them at all. Meanwhile, Hum continued to be tightly pulled into the relentless rhythm of year-end work, a fast-paced, demanding routine that nearly consumed all of his time. Long shifts followed one another, unexpected meetings piled up endlessly, leaving him rarely able to return home early as he once did. There were days when he came back late at night, the streets already glowing with lights, and the house dimly lit only by the faint glow from the kitchen or hallway. Hoai Ca and the children were already fast asleep, leaving behind a familiar sense of emptiness. Family meals gradually became fewer, no longer filled with laughter and conversation, reduced instead to a few hurried, fragmented exchanges before each of them returned to their own worries. During the rare moments when they had time to talk, Hoai Ca occasionally mentioned Alex and his daughter to Hung. She spoke lightly and naturally, as if talking about someone she happened to meet in everyday life. She told him about taking the children out together, about how the kids got along well, and about Alex as a thoughtful single father. Hoai Ca neither hid anything nor embellished the story, nor did she emphasize anything beyond the truth. To her, it was simply a normal friendship, and the way she shared it carried no hesitation or guardedness. Hung listened with ease. He smiled, thinking it was only natural, especially since both of them had young children and could easily find common ground in parenting. In Hung's mind, Hoai Ca was a woman he trusted completely. That trust had been built over years of living together, through everything they had endured side by side. Because of that, he never once questioned or doubted her, nor did he ever imagine that such seemingly ordinary relationships could carry quiet changes unfolding beyond his awareness. Time continued to pass slowly, yet relentlessly, carrying along the familiar routines of each person. Hoai Ca and Alex met from time to time, often without any clear plan. Most of their encounters happened naturally. Sometimes it was an afternoon at the park with the children, where they happened to run into each other and ended up sitting down to talk. Other times, it was a visit to a small eatery, meant to be brief at first, but the conversation lingered longer than expected. Neither of them deliberately arranged these meetings, yet they continued to occur regularly, becoming a familiar part of everyday life. Over time, the conversations between Hoai Ca and Alex began to change. At first, they were nothing more than polite greetings and general exchanges. Gradually, they grew longer and deeper. They talked more about their children, about the very ordinary worries of being parents. Alex spoke about sleepless nights when his daughter was sick, about the confusion and exhaustion of having to shoulder everything alone. His voice was calm, without complaint, yet beneath his words lay the unmistakable loneliness of a single father. Hoai Ca listened, and through that listening, she slowly opened up as well. She spoke of the pressures of managing the household and caring for the children, of moments when exhaustion weighed so heavily that she longed for a quiet space just for herself. She spoke of the emptiness that sometimes surfaced, even when surrounded by family and loved ones. Their stories were not dramatic or sorrowful, but they were enough for each of them to recognize that both were carrying heavy responsibilities and quiet loneliness that was hard to name. It was this sense of empathy, this understanding born from shared experiences, that gradually narrowed the distance between Hoai Ca and Alex. Everything happened naturally, without haste, without either of them deliberately crossing any boundaries. Through each conversation, each moment of listening, they grew more familiar with one another, more accustomed to the other's presence. Still, Hoai Ca constantly reminded herself that everything should remain at the level of friendship. She tried to keep a safe boundary as a way of restraining herself from going further than she allowed. Yet those vague emotions continued to exist quietly, subtly weaving themselves into conversations that grew deeper with time as the days continued to pass. That evening, after the two of them brought the children home from the park, Alex took the initiative to offer Hoai Ca and her children a ride back. Night had fully fallen. The familiar streets grew quieter, and streetlights stretched into long trails of pale yellow light across the dew-dampened road. Sitting in the front seat, Hoai Ca gently turned her head to look behind her, where Tony and Alex's daughter had already fallen sound asleep. The two children leaned against each other, their breathing slow and steady, their faces peaceful after an exhausting afternoon of running and play. The scene made her heart soften, instinctively warm, yet fragile in a way that was hard to put into words. Inside the car, the silence felt unusual. There were no casual conversations like before, and neither of them spoke first. Only the steady hum of the engine filled the night, mixed with the soft sound of tires rolling over the road. Alex focused on driving, his hands gripping the steering wheel more tightly than usual. Hoai Ca sat beside him, staring straight ahead, an indescribable feeling rising within her. The silence wasn't heavy, but it was enough for her to sense that something was waiting, like a pause before everything changed. When the car stopped in front of Hoai Ca's house, Alex didn't rush to turn off the engine or step out as he usually did. He sat still for a moment, eyes fixed ahead, then slowly turned toward her. His voice lowered, losing its familiar gentleness and carrying a rare seriousness instead. Alex said there was something he had wanted to say for a long time, but only now had the courage to speak. Hoai Ca froze slightly, her hand unconsciously tightening around the strap of her bag, her heart skipping a beat she couldn't explain. Alex opened the car door and stepped out first. He walked to the back, opened the trunk, and took out a small bouquet of flowers along with a neatly wrapped gift box. The gesture wasn't extravagant, but it clearly showed careful preparation. It wasn't impulsive. When Alex returned to stand in front of Hoai Ca, the streetlight cast a soft glow on his face, highlighting the seriousness and sincerity in his eyes. He stood facing her, neither rushing nor avoiding her gaze. His voice was low and deliberate, each word carefully weighed. He confessed that he no longer wanted to hide the feelings he had been carrying inside. From the initial gratitude, from the simple meetings, from conversations that stretched longer than intended, those emotions had grown without him even realizing it. Alex said he had thought deeply, questioned himself many times, and finally understood that he could no longer see everything as just empathy between two parents. He spoke of his daughter, of his wish to give her a true home, one where she would grow up not only with material security, but also with the warmth of a complete family. Alex said he didn't want to walk the rest of his life alone anymore. And through all those thoughts, the person he kept thinking of was Hoai Ca. He hoped she could be the woman to walk beside him on the road ahead, not only for the children, but for his genuine feelings as well. Hoai Ca stood silently before his confession. The world around her seemed to slow down, only the streetlight, the cool night breeze, and the steady breathing of the two sleeping children in the car remained. She looked at the bouquet, at the gift box in Alex's hands, then into the sincere eyes waiting in front of her. In that moment, her thoughts became tangled, caught between responsibility, reason, and the vague emotions she had deliberately avoided facing for so long. Hoai Ca stood frozen for a moment, as if all the sounds around her had slowed to a hush. Her gaze drifted unconsciously away from Alex's face, settling on some undefined empty space ahead. In her mind, the image of Hung suddenly appeared with striking clarity, so vivid that it made her heart ache for a beat. She saw Hung as he was in those quiet days of relentless effort for the family, the man who came home late at night yet still gently asked after his wife and children, the man worn down by work, but never once complaining. She remembered the trust he had always placed in her, a quiet, steadfast trust, never shadowed by suspicion or control. Those memories surfaced one after another, not loudly, yet heavy enough to weigh on her heart. Hoai Ca suddenly realized that throughout the time Hung had been consumed by work, he had still been carrying his responsibilities in his own way. Even though he was rarely home, even as invisible distances slowly formed, the affection and trust he placed in her had never wavered. And it was precisely that realization that left Hoai Ca even more conflicted, because she understood that with just one wrong step, everything behind her might never remain whole again. Hoai Ca lowered her gaze to the small bouquet in Alex's hands. The flowers were still fresh, neatly arranged, much like the sincerity he had just laid bare. She could feel his care, his seriousness, and his genuine hope in the eyes of the man standing before her. Alex didn't rush her, didn't demand an answer right away. Yet that silent waiting itself became an immense pressure in Hoai Ca's heart. She stood caught between two opposing currents. On one side, responsibility, the past, and a trust that had never been broken. On the other, the present, filled with attentiveness, understanding, and an unhidden confession of love. In that moment, Hoai Ca felt as though she were standing at a crossroads where no matter which path she chose, there would be no returning to how things once were. She didn't know whether she should step forward to face a new feeling unfolding before her, or step back and continue waiting for Hung amid the distance created by work and the silences yet to be filled. Her thoughts tangled together, leaving her unable to speak, and too unsettled to make a decision right then. Will Hoai Ca choose the sincere, attentive love Alex is offering? Or will she continue to place her trust in Hung, the man who is still quietly striving within the relentless rhythm of work and life? Where will these relationships, once so seemingly clear, lead when emotions begin to slip beyond control? What will happen next? Stay tuned for the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau nhé.